Welcome back. The Competition Commission has announced a substantial reduction in the price of Covid-19 tests. This comes after an agreement was reached with two laboratories. Ampath and Lancet have agreed to reduce the price of Covid PCR tests. It will now cost 500 Rand each from the previous 850 Rand. Heidi Giokos joins us now. Heidi, some people would say too little, too late after 2 years of paying 850 Rand for a test that many people have had to have numerous times, and possibly many people have been unable to test due to the pricing. Some people also speculating that during those 2 years, laboratories have made billions of Rand. What's the essence from the Competition Commissioner of why this is only happening now?
So what's interesting here, Annalie, is when this briefing started, the Competition Commissioner highlighted the fact that testing is an important tool in fighting this pandemic. But you have a situation where tests cost 850 Rand up until now, and many people were opting not to test. Many people said, I might have symptoms, but I'll just rather self-medicate. People might have suspected they had COVID-19, but they opted not to test because of how high the price actually is. We do understand that the Competition Commissioner highlighting that an investigation started in October, and this is why they decided to investigate, and a decision has now been made now mid-December that the cost of a PCR test will be no more than 500 Rand, VAT included. So it used to be 850 Rand, now it will cost you 500 Rand, and it's at the two biggest and the most predominant laboratories that people have been using, Ampath and Lancet laboratories. So when we asked the Commissioner why it took so long, he basically said it hasn't taken that long because the investigation started in October and a decision has been made mid-December to reduce these prices. But he also went on to highlight the fact that billions of rands have been made, and they can't divulge that information, but they did find that profits were extremely high. And one can imagine, I mean, these are the two labs that people would normally go to get their results. But they're saying that before this pandemic started, or just before when it did start, people were paying over 1,000 Rand for their PCR tests to be done, and that dropped to 850 Rand. But it's over a year and a half that people have been paying 850 Rand, which many say is just really unacceptable. But let's listen to the Competition Commission on the decision to drop the prices to no more than 500 Rand for a PCR test.
The Competition Tribunal, upon application by the parties, has confirmed the groundbreaking agreement between the Competition Commission and each of the two largest private pathology laboratories in South Africa, namely Ampath and Lancet. The agreement settled a dispute on pricing of COVID-19 PCR tests. In terms of the agreement, Ampath and Lancet have agreed to reduce the price of COVID-19 PCR tests from about 850 or whichever prevailing price to no more than 500 rands, including VAT per test with immediate effect. This follows an investigation by the Commission, which was triggered by a complaint lodged by the Council of Medical Schemes in October 2021, alleging that the price for supplying PCR tests for COVID-19 is unfairly inflated, exorbitant, and or unjustifiable in contravention of Section 81A of the Competition Act.
Heidi, will that price reduction come into effect immediately?
Yes, Annalie, with immediate effect. I actually have seen some reports and some people tweeting and saying that already as of last night, they were paying 500 Rand for a COVID PCR test to be done. So it seems as though this is with immediate effect. And I think it will bring some relief, even though many people are saying it's just not good enough. It's a little too late. Some are also saying this will bring some relief. The interesting conversation, though, that I think is to be expected is whether or not this can be reduced even more. and asking the Competition Commission why 500 Rand was decided on. The Competition Commission is saying that looking at all costs and speaking, of course, to these two labs, it's been concluded that this is the best price at the moment. But we've reached out to Ampath and Lancet for them just to explain to South Africans why these PCR tests cost so much. If you just look at what's happening globally in Europe, this test is sometimes free, and or if you do pay, it's next to nothing. So if we could just get a clearer understanding as to why it costs so much, and then maybe we can understand why we have to pay 500 Rand now, why we had to pay 850 Rand for this test to be conducted. So it's an important decision that the Competition Commission has forced these two labs to make sure it's done with immediate effect. But still, I think South Africans deserve to know a little more around this PCR test, why it costs so much, and if it can be reduced at all even further.
Heidi, also perhaps a conversation to be had is with medical aid schemes in the country. To some extent, they've been paying for tests, I think up to 1 or 2 tests per person in a certain period of time. And perhaps one can ask big leaders in the industry like Discovery, who've also had input in this issue, why they waited so long before raising the issue with the Competition Commission. Perhaps that conversation to be had on ENCA later today. Thank you very much. That was reporter Heidi Giokos bringing us the latest on pricing of COVID-19 PCR tests.